Hi folks, this is Ben from ultrabooknews.com, and we just got an exciting package from Japan, and I hope you'll join me for some tea as we unbox it. So let's take a look. So as you can see from the packaging, this is the NEC Lavie Z. This is the world's lightest Ultrabook. Power adapter there. Lots of exciting manuals, and I am going to leave these alone because I have a strange feeling that they're not going to be very useful to me. That said, the Lavie Z is available here thanks to Dynamism, and they offer an import and take care of making sure that you get a proper adapter for the US here. And we want to thank them for sending us this unit to take a look at. And let's get to it here. So here's the unit itself, and upon first holding on to it, it actually feels like there's no battery inside. But I know that's not true because this is a completely sealed unit. So there's no removable battery, no access to RAM or hard drive. But wow, that's significantly less than what I'm used to with other Ultrabooks. That's pretty incredible. It absolutely feels like there's no battery inside. Hopefully that doesn't turn out to be the case in terms of battery life. Now it actually looks a lot like and feels a lot like an 11-inch Ultrabook because it's so darn thin. But I've got the UX31 here from Asus to compare, and you'll notice the footprint isn't that much different. It's a little bit, the Lavie Z is a little bit, has a slightly smaller footprint, doesn't bezel down as much on the edges. The Lavie Z is probably a little bit thinner, but it doesn't come to such a fine tip as the UX31 does. So the UX31 is a 13.3-inch Ultrabook, and I'll show you the screen here, and you can see there's a decent amount of bezel space. The Lavie Z is also a 13.3-inch Ultrabook, and you can see that here when I hold the screens up. It's got a lot less bezel, real thin bezel, and we know some of you guys will really like that. So let's actually take a closer look at the unit here. And just real quick, I've got to say, the Lavie Z feels almost half the weight of the UX31E, which is pretty awesome because the UX31E is already pretty light. I want to say that's around 1.35 kilograms. NEC was able to get the Lavie Z around 900 grams, which is pretty awesome. This they did that with this material here, which kind of feels plastic, but I believe it's a magnesium substance of some sort. I can't remember what it was. Magnesium alloy. I don't know. Something special. Feels like plastic, but whatever it is, wow, very light. Real quick, we'll do the hinge screen test here. Of course, we'd like to make sure that when we lift the screen up, the rest of the body stays, but that is not happening in this case, so you either have to shake it, which you won't want to do, or you'll have to hold it down with one finger. Not our favorite thing there, but can't have it all, right? So real quick around the device, absolutely nothing on top except for a little plastic piece here, which will house the Wi-Fi and Bluetooth antennas. Little NEC logo there. On the right side, we have a 3.5 millimeter headphone jack here, and the icon looks just like a headset, or headphones rather than a headset, so that may only be just audio output. Sometimes these are combo jacks that also accept mic input, but this one looks to be just audio output. So two USB ports here. One of them on the right is USB 3.0, and full HDMI, which I'm really pleasantly surprised to see here, because the UX31 does not have that. So it's got the same number of USB ports. There's one here and one on the other side, but the HDMI is micro actually, which is a pain. In fact, I've never used it because it didn't come with an adapter and I haven't yet bought one. So much better to have full HDMI in there, and I think that really makes up for the fact that this only has 2 USB ports. We'd always like to see a minimum of 3, but 2 can cut it. If you hook up at the desk, though, it's going to be a pain. Over here is the power adapter, kind of a funky shape, but they needed to make it thin. On the other side, we have a full-size SD card slot and some heat vents here, Kensington lock port on the left there, nothing on the back. On the bottom, again, no access to anything. These are probably speakers here, and some cooling for the RAM and hard drive and processor there. So let's get this opened up and get some of this off. Like I said, you guys are going to enjoy this thin bezel. We know some of you guys, for some reason, just hate having too much width around there. This one looks real good. So this is the Core i7 version, and I want to say it's got 4 gigs like most units today, but let's turn it on and have a look. So this is a Japanese-English keyboard. Some of the buttons right here are things I can't even read, but all of the Windows 8 that is installed is English. For those in the US, the small enter key or oddly shaped enter key here and the small shift key might be kind of annoying, but in Europe most of the keyboards are this way, so not much different for you guys. So we've got Windows 8 pre-installed, and let's go ahead and look at the specs here. Now comes the fun part where we get to relearn how to use the computer because it's Windows 8. Oh boy. We'll get it, I promise. There we go. So, yep, we've got 4 gigs of RAM here. This is the Core i7 at 1.9 gigahertz, and that turbo boosts up to, I want to say, 3 gigahertz. There's no Windows Experience score right off the bat, so why don't we run that just to be sure. And also, while we're at it, we're going to check the hard drive size. 238 gigs, so it's probably a 256 gigabyte SSD in there with a recovery partition, and we'll check the BIOS a little later, see if there's anything exciting in there. So let's run the Windows Experience Index. Of course, it's got to be harder to find than it once was, because it wouldn't be a new version of Windows if they didn't confuse us. So go ahead and run this here. Oh, system cannot be found. Great, that's why we want to run it. We can't run it on batteries, of course. So let me get this plugged in for us and we'll see what it can do. Okay, so we're plugged into power here and we're going to run the Windows Experience Index. Something important to remember is this is fresh out of the box, so there's likely drivers out of date, so at least graphics will need to be updated, and I'll run them later. I'll update them later and see if we get any changes in performance. Now while this is running, I want to point out interestingly, you see right here, it actually says Lavie G, although this is supposed to be the Lavie Z as far as we know it. It's unclear exactly what the G means versus Z. It may just be in the configuration, but I mean, this is an Ultrabook proper. They've got the sticker and everything right here, so it's definitely not just a standard laptop version of the computer. Maybe they just changed the name off the bat. Maybe we had it wrong to begin with, but as far as we know, this is the Lavie Z. So while that's running in the background, real quick, I just want to, it shouldn't affect it too much, I just want to check the screen resolution. So yeah, as I thought, this is a 1600 by 900 panel, which is pretty awesome. It's not 1080. I don't really think you need, or in many cases even want 1080 in a 13.3-inch panel. But so many Ultrabooks out there are still 1366 by 768. The Dell XPS 13, the Vaio T13, the Lenovo U310, U410, and even U510, I think, are all 1366 by 768 with no option to get a bigger screen. And you know, that can be kind of annoying for some people. It's I think 1600 by 900 is pretty great. The UX31E has 1600 by 900, which I've been using for a long time, works pretty well. And then for a couple different Ultrabooks like the Asus S7 and the UX31A, you can even go up to a 1080p screen if you want there, which is pretty great. But yeah, 1366, a little bit low, a little too low for some of you that you wouldn't even consider it. But with this thin bezel and 1600 by 900 display, which looks quite bright and quite nice, I think a lot of you guys could really appreciate this here, especially with that light. If you need lightness, I don't know. I don't know if I could recommend anything else at this point. This is incredible. So this is going to take another few minutes to run, and we'll check in with the results in just a minute. So the experience index is finished now, and for processor, we scored 7.1, which is pretty good with the Core i7. Memory, 4 gigs of RAM. Not sure if it's 1600 or 1333 megahertz. I hope it's the former. Double check on that, but that's scored a 5.9. The lowest point, and the reason it got a 4.6 was graphics, desktop graphics performance according to Windows. Now this has HD 4000 inside, and I want to say I've seen better scores than that. I'll have to double check on that, but I do feel like this may be an issue of outdated drivers. The latest HD 4000 graphics drivers enable support for several new things, including the latest version of OpenGL, OpenCL, and a couple other updates which may bump that score up. Now that's just desktop graphics. Gaming graphics scored 6.2, so it liked that a little bit more. Primary hard disk is 8.1, which is pretty astounding, so I expect to see some good results when we really do an in-depth test of the solid-state drive there. So I'm going to go ahead and update the graphics drivers, and we'll see if we get a change here. So I've just tried to run an update on the HD 4000 drivers with the latest version, and I'm getting a wonderful error. And it's likely because this is registering as a Japanese machine, so it doesn't want to accept the US drivers. We'll see if we can't fix that later, but for now I won't be able to check to see if the updated graphics driver makes much of a difference to Windows Experience Index. But we've got plenty more benchmarks to run with this. A full review coming, so drop us your questions if you have any. And it looks like that is about the last of my tea. So I guess we're done. Thanks for joining me, guys, and catch us at ultrabooknews.com for more. Thanks.